The countdown to the retrial of the century continues as Karen Reed prepares to face murder charges once again in the death of her boyfriend, Boston police officer John O'Keefe. Prosecutors have been trying to get access to the communications between Karen Reed's lawyers and Karen Reed's main supporter, Aiden Kearney, also known as Turtleboy. Prosecutors believe there was an effort by Karen Reed to intimidate witnesses with the help of Turtleboy. Tonight, the very latest from the courtroom. But first, in the heart of Waterbury, Connecticut, for over 2 decades, a young man who is now 32 was allegedly confined to a small locked room by his stepmother, Kimberly Sullivan. His world was one of isolation, deprivation, and unimaginable suffering. On February 17, 2025, in a desperate bid for freedom, he ignited a fire within his prison, hoping the flames would bring help. First responders arrived to a scene that defied belief. Through the smoke and chaos, they discovered the emaciated figure of a man weighing a mere 68 pounds at 5 feet 9 inches tall. Sullivan, 56 years old, now is facing serious criminal charges and was in court today for her arraignment as the outraged community tries to understand how such torment could remain hidden for so long. I'm Vinnie Politan. Thank you so much for joining us tonight on Closing Arguments. And this fact pattern has really struck a nerve. It has struck a nerve with the local community and around the nation now as they hear of this story. But let's talk about some of the other stories like this that we've covered and try to figure out why. Why does this happen? Remember the Ferreters? They built a little box in their garage. Hired construction workers to build it for their son, their adopted son. A box with a lock on the outside. A box where inside there was a camera, a bed, and a bucket. And that's where the child was living. That's where the child would spend hour after hour after hour. Not coming into the $900,000 house with the beautiful pool, with the rest of the family and the rest of the children. No, he was locked in a box. Well, now that father's locked in a box. Mom caught a break. How about Ruby Franke? Remember Ruby Franke and what happened in that case? She had her son punished by depriving him of food, a growing young boy, and then binding him with ropes. He was able to escape. He had to escape his own home to go to a neighbor's home to try to get some food. The neighbor next door, when he saw this boy, he calls 911 and he's crying because of the state of this boy who's being starved. Thank goodness he had the strength to escape. Then there's Shauna Vander Ark, one of the worst. It wasn't just locking her special needs son up, like in a closet, but then torturing him and having her other son torture his brother, like feeding him hot sauce while starving him at the same time. Disgraceful. These are parents. These are parents who bring these children into the world and then do this? Why? It's hard to understand. And now we get to the case of Kimberly Sullivan, who's married to a man. She has a stepson. At age 11, they remove him from society and confine him in a room for over 2 decades, at times getting like 1 minute in the backyard. Well, that 11-year-old grew up and is 32 years old and is only 68 pounds and figured out a way to escape. His father died, but he was still being held, allegedly, by his stepmother. So he sets a fire so people will respond and literally save him. Yes, from the fire, but really from his stepmother. Take a look at some of the video from that night when the fire was set and the emergency responders, the first responders and police came to the house and saved that young man.
Come over here, go down the road. Come on, come down, come down.
Come on, down.
Who else is in the house? Who else is in here?
My stepson is in here.
How many other people? Listen,
That's it. I have 2 cats.
Everybody's out?
Yes.
But your stepson's still inside?
Yeah, he's right here.
Okay,
yes.
come out. Come down the road. Come on, come on. It's not safe to stay here. Come on.
All right, here he is. All right, my dog is shaking.
I know. Come down here. That's 287 code 3 victim. Fire victim.
Okay.
Come on.
My
80
dog
seconds
is,
right here. Come on.
my dog.
I know. Come on.
I'm coming.
You're seeing that one victim right here. You just stay over here.
And that night, they saved his life in more ways than one. And they didn't even realize it at the time. Unbelievable story. Well, that woman, that evil stepmother, Kimberly Sullivan, was in court today. And Court TV field reporter Cody Thomas joining us live with the latest on today's hearings. And I'm hearing there were some statements that were read today, pretty powerful statements that were read.
Absolutely, Vinnie. So today's court hearing was not only her arraignment, but it also revolved around a state's motion to modify conditions of release because she was arrested on March 12th, just about 2 weeks ago, and posted bond the following day. So she's been out freely walking around for the past 2 weeks. Now, before we get to those statements, I just want to establish what she's facing, the charges she's facing, and how much she's facing behind bars. So her charges include first-degree assault, a felony, second-degree kidnapping, a felony, first-degree unlawful restraint, another felony, cruelty to persons, and first-degree reckless endangerment, which are both misdemeanors. And in all total, Vinnie, she's facing 45 years on those 3 felonies alone, plus 2 years for both of those misdemeanors, so 47 years total. Now, back to those statements. Today, during this court appearance, the state presented statements from the victim himself and also from a friend of Kimberly Sullivan who said she didn't even know that Sullivan had a stepson. Take a listen to these statements.
This victim is afraid. This victim lives in fear. I introduced myself to the victim, explained who I was. His first question in this fear is, why is she out walking around when I was locked up in a room for 20 years? He is following this on TV and social media, so he is aware of what's happening, and I say that because it would lead to his fear. A friend of the defendants of 21 years has come forward and provided a written statement to the state, to the police, that in the 21 years she's known this defendant, she's never spoken of a stepson. She was shocked to learn she had a stepson, and that friend was never allowed in this house.
Absolutely astonishing there, Vinnie. You know somebody for 21 years and they don't even mention they have a stepson, and that's around the amount of time that he was held captive and essentially
living in the house.
In the house.
Living in their house.
And essentially the state was arguing today for the conditions of release that she be put on house arrest so she could have limited travel, also with the GPS monitor. That's pretty much what the state was arguing for today.
And how about the defense? What did they say about her remaining at large? So
the defense was pretty much saying in the past 2 weeks, she's complied with all the rules set forth by the court. She's not a flight risk. The defense also says their whole job with her is to protect her rights, and they say her rights are the only ones that matters in this particular case. Take a listen.
This is the 3rd time we are back addressing the same issues. Bond has been set. Conditions of release have been addressed by the court. The state made essentially the same arguments on prior occasions, which were considered by the court and rejected. And I understand that the whole world wants to convict Ms. Sullivan, and the whole world already has. But this is the only place, the only room in this country where we have an opportunity to protect her rights.
So, Vinnie, that defense attorney goes on to pretty much argue that those conditions of release were already set 2 weeks ago once she was arrested, and they don't want the judge to double back on everything that was already set.
All right, well, this case moving forward, she is like public enemy number one.
Absolutely.
I mean, what this young man went through from age 11. Cody Thomas, thank you so much. We have a special guest joining us now, the biological mother of the victim in this case. Tracy Valorand is here. Tracy, thank you so much for joining us. I know this is not easy to talk about. I know how heartbreaking all of this is, but do you know tonight how he's doing?
I don't. I do not. As long as it's an ongoing investigation, he is going to be kept private. And I know he's in a better place right now, so that's what matters.
It'd be difficult for there to be a worse place. And it's great to see that he was able to get out of there. Let's back this whole thing up. How did this happen? How was it that he somehow, the first time I covered this story, I know there were teachers at one point that were very concerned about his well-being. You're his mom. So how, from your perspective, how did all this happen to him?
His father shut me out. And then after a while, he actually shut everybody out. Now, I don't know I know when his father and myself were together, he was not a bad guy. I don't know if he was vindictful that we had split up. I don't know. I'm still trying to grasp all this, and it's really, really, really hard. When DCF was called in 2004 several times, they did nothing. They did absolutely nothing. And just because you have a clean house does not mean you have a healthy house. Parents are supposed to help their children be the best people that they can, grow into responsible adults. Not lock them in a room.
So through the years, the separation that you had from him, so what happened? Give us a little bit of the backstory of how you became separated and any efforts that you made to try to reconnect with your son.
I had some issues I was dealing with personally that have nothing to do with the Sullivans. There's just so much stuff that was happening beforehand. We started dating, and after we started dating, we got married. And 9 months later, my son was born. Well, I was still going through some of those issues at the time, and trying to cope with those issues. I thought the safest place he would be was with a parent, with his father. And that didn't happen.
And if you are struggling, right, and then you know that he may be able to take care of your son, that was the right choice to make. That's the choice. That's the selfless choice that a mother makes who wants the best for their child.
So. You would think so. He was kept with monsters.
Did you ever meet Kimberly Sullivan?
I have never met her.
Now, I understand through the years you attempted to reconnect with your son.
I did.
And what happened?
Well, when he used to take my son for walks, I was told where he would take him, and I'd hang out there, and I'd wait for hours and hours. He wouldn't show up. One of my ex-brother-in-laws got a job with me, and we started talking about my son, and he's like, well, let me see if I can arrange to have him come over. So I go over there for a couple hours and never showed up. Never showed up.
How about when he became an adult, right? Because he's 32 now.
He is 32. He just turned 32.
How curious were you about how he was doing and where he was?
From the time he turned 18, we started looking for him because he should have been an adult. He should have been in school, out having a job, falling in love. He should have been able to be a person.
Tracy, when you heard this story, how long did it take for you to put the pieces together and realize that it was your son that was saved, your son that was able to escape from all of this?
My sister had called me and told me we found him. Finally found him.
Take your time, Tracy. Now, my understanding from what we heard in court is that your son may be following some of the developments of this story, maybe watching news reports like this about this story. If he's watching now, or if he watches this when it's posted online, do you have a message for your son?
I'm sorry he had to go through this. I can't. He shouldn't have had to do that ever. He shouldn't have had to deal with that. And he could have been taken out of that in 2004 if DCF did their job.
Tracy, what are your hopes and plans now for the future, now that he's escaped the torture and is recovering?
I'm so happy that he did. I want him to do whatever he wants to do. If he wants to go to school, go back to school. If you want to learn how to do something with your hands, do something that makes you happy. That's what he needs to do, is do something that makes him happy.
Well, Tracy, I know this is, and everyone at home, their hearts are breaking for your son. I know people across the nation are praying for him and are hoping for the best for him in his recovery. And I know you're there for him as well. I want to thank you for joining us, Tracy, and sharing the story, because it makes it real. And I'm wondering, as this progresses through everything, are your hopes that at some point you two may be able to share some moments together?
I would love that. I would love that.
I think you both deserve it. I think you both deserve it. Tracy, thank you so much, and we wish the best for you, your family, and obviously for your son. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right. When we come back, we'll bring in our think tank and get their take on this case that really unthinkable what happened to this young man. We'll be back.
Join Court TV's Vinnie Politan with the latest and breaking true crime stories.
Now, let's look at the other side of all of that.
Vinnie Politan Investigates. Tonight, 9/8 Central, only on Court TV.
It's a whodunit Hollywood story.
Monica Cimentelli is accused of plotting to kill her husband.
Celebrity hairstylist Fabio Cimentelli.
The celebrity stylist murder trial continues Tuesday on Court TV.
I'm denying the state's request for EMS house arrest. I don't believe, given the factors I consider, that is warranted. As far as the next court date or any additional issues?
Your Honor, may we enter a not guilty plea and make a jury election today?
Yes. Noted for the record.
So the so-called evil stepmom, Kimberly Sullivan, accused of locking her stepson up with his father for years and then by herself when the father passes away, gets house arrest. I want to read this because trying to understand what is her defense to all this going to be. Ionis Kaloidis tells People that his client, Kimberly Sullivan, was not the one making choices about how her stepson should be raised, saying that it was her late husband, keyword late husband, right? Point the finger at the dead guy, and the boy's father, Craig Sullivan, who ultimately made all decisions regarding the boy's care. He was in control, Kaloidis said, of the victim's late father. Kaloidis claims that it was not Sullivan who decided to put the victim in that room or pull him from school at the age of 11, but rather his father. But then he died, and he was still locked up. The think tank with us. Let's bring him in. Chief Public Defender, Oakland County, Michigan. She represented the Oxford High School shooter. Paulette Lofton is with us. Former Deputy Public Defender for LA County, Philip Dubé, and Criminal Defense Attorney Silva Megardician is with us. Great to have you here. Okay. Before we get to the criminal part of it, because I see a 32-year-old man now who has to take care of himself. Can he just sue her and get all her money before she gives it to her lawyers? Is that possible? Can that happen here? Anyone? Let's go with Philip. Can that happen? Because that's what he deserves. He's been locked up. Like, sue her now. Freeze the assets, and I don't want her criminal defense lawyer getting whatever dollars she has in this world. And this poor kid, he's not a kid, he's 32, but he's been, locked up for all these years, has nothing.
Sure, but I think you have much more leverage if you do the criminal trial and get her convicted, because then what you do, and maybe Paulette, you can back me on this, at least out here in California, I'm sure in Michigan they do the same, you get a restitution hearing. And the beauty of that is that you've already got a criminal judgment All you got to do is prove up your damages. If he's got hard economic losses, the standard of proof is pretty low to get restitution. And if she is convicted, I mean, you know, that's pretty much the predicate to getting that civil restitution without having to do a full civil lawsuit with discovery, depositions.
That's true. It takes time. How about that,
Yeah.
Paulette? What do you think?
I agree. I think going through with a criminal case first, seeing what happens there before making any further decisions.
Well, what I would do if I was the prosecutor and she wanted a deal, a condition of that deal would be restitution up front. Not a payment plan where you're gonna, not pay. No, all the money up front, pay for it, whatever the restitution is, give this 32-year-old young man who's been tortured for years something so he can have some semblance of a life once he gets physically healthy and while he works on his mental health through all of this. All right, Silva, what do you think of the defense here, pointing the finger at the dead late husband, who is the biological father?
You know, honestly, Vinnie, they have no choice, right? I mean, obviously, she is mentally ill in some capacity. Anyone that does this to anybody, much less their stepson, they're going to argue that she was captive as well, under control, to the point that mentally she couldn't get out of it, that she continued to live under that torturous control even a year after his death. Of course it's a stretch because he's been dead for a year now at least, and whether or not he exerted any control, she had the fortitude to get out of the situation and get her stepson out of the situation. I think the defense is really going to have to focus on the fact that obviously there's something incredibly wrong with her, have some kind of factual backup to show that he had some sort of control. But again, it looks like he did allow his son certain freedoms that completely stopped once he died. So it's a stretch of a defense, but what choice do they have? They have to defend her to the best way possible.
And let's get to that. Paulette, take a listen to this. This is from the arrest affidavit. The victim added that on weekends he would be let out of his room for longer periods of time by his father. The victim stated that while Sullivan took his sisters to events and to see friends, his father would allow him to come out and watch television with him. When discussing his father dying, he stated that his captivity and restraint got even worse. He stated that it got to a point where the only time he'd ever be let out of the house once his father died was to let the family dog out in the back of the property, stating that that was only about 1 minute a day. Paulette, this is going to be ugly. You put this in front of a jury, zero chance. It's going to be zero chance.
Yeah, a jury is not going to like her. And I think those facts that you just read are going to make that defense that we just discussed really hard. Maybe if the father was still alive, that defense would hold up. But here, father being dead now more than a year and things getting actually worse compared to better. He didn't receive any treatment, any help. He wasn't let out of the room. Now, if this gentleman was really a captor and was holding them and not allowing them to do certain things, that's ended. He passed away. So there's a number of freedoms that are now, able to be accessed, and things got worse. So that's going to make that defense really difficult.
All right, what's justice here, Philip Dubé? How? Because she's got to do time. She's got to do real time.
Justice here is not to do a jury trial. What I might do is meet with prosecutors and see if they would agree to waive jury, do a bench trial, and agree to a max when she is convicted. So, for example, if count one carries up to 25 years and you give each other sort of the winky wink that it only carries 20 because she's waiving jury and the trial will be over in 2 days, and you'll stipulate to full restitution, you're done. That's how you do it. On the other hand, if she absolutely refuses, you just do the trial and you let the chips fall where they may.
I know where they're going to fall. I know where those chips are falling. I know where those are falling up in Connecticut.
Yes.
All right, Think Tank staying with us. When we come back, we're going to talk about the Karen Reed trial. There was a hearing today. Not in front of Judge Cannoni, though. It's the judge who's handling Turtleboy's case, but it was a hearing in the Karen Reed case. We'll explain.
Patient. So, my order did not specifically exclude from production communications between Mr. Kearney and Ms. Reed's counsel because the court was told there were no such communications, and in any event, the Commonwealth acknowledged that they were privileged. So my first question is to you, Attorney Brennan. Respectfully, did I misunderstand you, or perhaps vice versa? In other words, I understood that you weren't requesting the production of any privileged communications, to wit, communications between Mr. Kearney and Ms. Reed's counsel. And as such, if that is the case, and we did understand each other, I can simply clarify my order for special ADA Cosgrove that those claimed to be privileged communications will be excluded from the Rule 17 production, and we can move on. If that's not the case, I'd like to hear why.
As we get ready for the retrial of the century up in Massachusetts, the Karen Reed retrial, every day is like another motion, another strange development in all of this. Now, underlying all of this is that the prosecution believes that Aiden Kearney, also known as Turtleboy, was communicating with Karen Reed, and Karen Reed was getting him to intimidate witnesses out there. That's part of their theory of what they believe was happening here. So they want to get the communications between Turtleboy and Karen Reed's attorneys. Strange, right? Take a listen to the arguments.
I do not believe there is any attorney-client privilege between Ms. Reed's lawyers and Mr. Kearney, because those communications are not covered by attorney-client privilege, because none of Ms. Reed's lawyers are attorneys for Mr. Kearney. I do not know what is in these phones. I have not asked. I don't want to know unless it's pursuant to a court order. But based on the affidavit of the search warrant, and based on the pleadings in this case, and there's two very important pleadings, I may have mentioned them to the court on the last date, but those pleadings, which were filed publicly by the Commonwealth, and it's docket number 53 relative to Mr. Kearney's case 0043. In that pleading, it is set out by the Commonwealth's pleading that there is, in fact, information demonstrating that the Reed team provided Mr. Kearney with information, documents, videos. It suggested that at times they would suggest angles for him to use it or to refrain from using it, and it provides a number of examples.
I think the actions of Ms. Reed's attorneys on her behalf are the actions of Ms. Reed. And if one reads the sweep of the communications between Mr. Yannetti and Mr. Kearney, and between Mr. Jackson and Mr. Kearney, and Ms. Reed and Mr. Kearney, one sees a pattern of feeding information to Mr. Kearney. I think that they act together in that respect, Your Honor.
The court's position is that the order spoke very specifically and very clearly to limit the Rule 17 motion to the production of only communications between Defendant Reed and Kearney and Defendant Kearney concerning those three areas of inquiry. So I am specifically requesting and ordering the Commonwealth in that case to review the documents called as a result of the Rule 17 motion in my subsequent order, such that the production will only include communications between Kearney and Reed.
Now, you saw those two lawyers in there are two special prosecutors who had to be brought in here. One is the special prosecutor prosecuting Turtleboy for allegations of witness intimidation. The other special prosecutor is the one prosecuting Karen Reed. And the cases are like crisscrossing all over the place. But let's try to make it a big picture here. So, Paulette, is it fair? Is this some sort of conspiracy? Is this illegal? Is this untoward? What is it if Karen Reed and her team are giving information to a member of the media, which is what he is? It's the new media that exists today, but giving information to a member of a media about a case. Like, is this a huge problem here?
I think it may be. Obviously, they want to spin things in their favor. And we saw from the first trial, it worked. There was always more supporters for Karen Reed than the poor gentleman.
Well, let me ask you this. This is really the way I'm looking at this, so you understand. So, and I'm a former prosecutor. Like, we come out, we accuse someone, we have an indictment, we bring him into court, sometimes there's a perp walk, there's a statement about the arrest, all of that, and we lay out our case, prosecutors do. And this seems like it's like the defense trying to do the same thing as they're finding out information and trying to get the media to cover the other side of the story. Why is that not fair? And Philip Dubé is just shaking all over the place. Paulette, I'll let you finish, and then we'll go to Philip.
Sure. So I agree with your line of thinking. That should be, the way that it works for defense to at least level the playing field. But how the prosecution is going to flip it is they're going to say, if Miss Reed truly was innocent, she wouldn't have to do all this because she would have no doubts that the jury would look at the evidence and find her not guilty.
And what's interesting, Philip, is that this is a very aggressive prosecution, and they want all this new information. Why do they need all this new information if they believe that she committed, this is information that's after the fact. They indicted her years ago before any of this information even existed. Why do they need that to prosecute her? Like Paulette said, well, if she's innocent, then the evidence isn't there. But if she's guilty, the evidence should be there. Why is it a sign of desperation that the prosecution is digging and digging and digging for more and more and looking for attorney communications now?
Well, first of all, I respectfully disagree with the Commonwealth's tactic of trying to get those communications. Separate and apart from attorney-client privilege, they have in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts and even out here in California, the work product doctrine. And what work product says is that anytime you have a defense attorney working on a case, that lawyer's impressions, investigations, conclusions, and theories of the case enjoy a special privilege from discovery. You don't have to turn that over, and that dates all the way back to high court precedent, I think, from the 30s or the 40s. So I take exception to this notion that an attorney is trying to get work product from a defense attorney. It's just repugnant. Now, having said that, I don't know that I would call it desperation, but they suffered a great defeat in the first trial in that it was a deadlocked jury. In order to prevail in this case, they're going to have to convince a whole new crop of 12 that she committed murder. And the problem is their lead detective has been defrocked.
Yeah, he has. And the first jury, and honestly, the first jury, found her not guilty of murder, but they didn't fill out the paperwork. Silva, I'll give you the final word here before we run out of time. What are your thoughts about all of this stuff happening right now on the eve of the retrial?
Vinnie, I do think it's desperation. I completely agree with what Philip is saying. It's a last-ditch effort to try to get a hold on this case because honestly, about 20 years ago, even 10 years ago, defense counsel always told their clients, don't talk to the media, don't talk to the media. And that's usually what we do for success. Karen Reed's case is so exceptional. From her doing the HBO Max documentary where she's like, I can finally be heard, to the media getting involved so deeply, she has an incredible and obsessive following that believe that she's innocent. And Vinnie, everything the defense did the first trial worked in their favor. I do think the prosecution is trying everything in their power to take every advantage from the defense away because they believe that's the only way they can win this trial. Honestly, the media push from the defense is working. And also what the defense is putting forward right now is also working. I think the prosecution really needs to stick to their legal theories. And just as Philip said, leave the attorneys out of it. Attorney-client privilege is sacred and shouldn't have even been argued about.
I agree. All right. Great job, everyone. Thank you so much. Paulette Lofton, Philip Dubé, Silva, Megardichian. We appreciate it. When we come back, I will reveal something else you need to know tonight, plus coming up next hour.
Tonight on Vinnie Politan Investigates, we take a look at 4 teenaged killers: Brian Coey, Aiden Fucci, Colin Griffith, and Carly Gregg. Why did these teens kill? Tonight, we investigate.
Court TV's Vinnie Politan with the latest and breaking true crime stories.
Now, let's look at the other side of all of that.
Vinnie Politan Investigates, coming up next, only on Court TV.
You feel that? The NWSL is on ION.
It's game time.
Showing off a little skill now. The new Saturday Night Out is on ION all season long. Find ION wherever you watch.
ION, it's on for this special offer.
Welcome back. Time to reveal something else you need to know tonight, and a witness taken into custody. Folks, you get a subpoena, you need to show up. This is in the trial of Linda Sturmer, on trial for first-degree and felony murder. She was previously convicted back in 2010. That was overturned, now being tried once again. She's accused of murdering her husband. Prosecutors say she set the house on fire and then ran him over with a van when he escaped that fire. But here was a witness who didn't show up, so that witness was taken into custody. Take a look.
Ma'am, due to your failure to appear here, I am concerned at this time about non-appearance when I hear about the transportation issues as well, so I am going to set a bond.
Okay. I have, my brother lives in Lawrence. I can live or stay in Lawrence.
Okay.
That's okay.
Well, for now, I'm going to set bond. I'm going to make it $1,000 cash or surety.
Oh my gosh.
Okay. To make sure that you show for the year on time for your under your subpoena. Sounds like both sides were inquiring about using you, and you didn't show.
It wasn't because I didn't. I was unaware that I was needed. Right. I mean, like honestly, I've had some stuff going on in my life that I didn't even like my own problems.
Okay.
You know, this isn't a big problem, but my own issues, like serious issues, and I wouldn't just miss something because I didn't want to be disrespectful, or just because I was being disrespectful to the court. I had no idea. Like.
Your Honor, not for nothing, but our subpoena was for April 7th because that's when we anticipate starting. So it wasn't like she missed our subpoena.
She missed yours. Okay. I am setting a bond, but the reason it's not too high, ma'am, is because we were able to get you here, but we had to get someone to get you here.
I don't have a car.
Okay. We'll have to figure out a way for transport then, okay? If you post that bond. Okay?
It's fair over somebody else's problems. My own life is my own problem.
Okay. Ma'am, I'm going to have you tested at the jail, okay? Anything else, anyone? Ma'am, if you do post that bond... Okay. If you're able to post the bond either directly or through other people, you need to report back here on April 1st at 1 o'clock, okay?
I don't have a car.
Okay. Well, make sure you're in contact with the lawyers so that they can contact you. If you don't post it, they'll contact you at the jail, okay?
That's not fair.
Okay.
You got to show up, and if you can't show up, you have to let the court know. If you let the court know, they'll get you there. But communication is the key in these situations when you've been subpoenaed to court. Okay, take a look at your television screens, folks. We have a missing child who needs your help. This is Hazel Verdialez. Hazel is just 14 years old, missing out of Tumble, Texas. If you see her, please pick up the phone, make a call, make a difference. You can call 911, 1-800-THE-LOST, or you can call the Harris County Sheriff's Office in Texas. That phone number's on our screen right now. Let's see if we can get Hazel to a safe place tonight. Don't go anywhere, folks. We've got another hour of live true crime. Vinnie Politan Investigates is next. In the meantime, please don't forget to hug the kids.